Hi, 5th grade. Happy Monday. Today we are doing lesson 24. I'm going to need you to get a few materials. You're going to need your write and reader like we do every week and a pencil. So go grab those materials and pause the video and then press play again when you're ready to continue. We are going to start today by talking about adjectives. Here I have the adjective short. We would use short when we are describing one noun. We would use the word shorter when we are describing two nouns. And we would use the word shortest when we are comparing three or more nouns. So short is our base word, adjective. When we are comparing two nouns, we add er to the end. And when we are comparing three or more nouns, we add est to the end to compare them. Here's an example. The book was short. We have one noun and we're describing it as short. But what if I had two books? The blue book is shorter than the red book. Now we're comparing them by using er. What if you had three different books? The red book is the shortest out of the three books. Let's try a couple more. We have the adjective cute, which would describe one noun. If we are comparing two nouns, cute is cute-er. We add the er to the end. If we are comparing three or more nouns, cute becomes cutest, and we add the est to the end. The bunny is cute. The bunny is cuter than the cat. Out of the bunny, the cat, and the turtle, I think the bunny is the cutest. Let's try this next word, pretty. Pretty is our adjective that describes one noun. If we are comparing two nouns, we would use prettier. We have our er. And if we are comparing three or more nouns, we would use prettiest. We have est at the end. Sometimes we have adjectives that don't follow that est rules, like good. So good would describe one noun. The pie was good. If we're comparing two nouns, we're not going to say gooder. That's not a word. So we're going to use better. The pumpkin pie was better than the apple pie. When we are comparing three or more nouns and using the adjective good, we're not going to say goodest. We're going to say best. The pumpkin pie was the best pie I had today. Far doesn't follow the rule either. Far would describe one noun. Farther would be when we were comparing two nouns. This one has the er, but we had to add this th to make our word. Farther. We wouldn't say farer, we would say farther. And when we're comparing three nouns, we say farthest. We have our est, but we had to add the th. Farthest. Now let's look at comparing adverbs. So adverbs describe verbs or action words. So here's an adverb, fast. That would describe one verb or action. Faster would describe two verbs or actions, and fastest would describe three or more verbs or actions. So this follows that same pattern as the adjectives did. Fast, faster, and fastest. So some adverbs follow that est rule, and others don't. So let's look at quietly. If an adverb ends in ly, we can't add er and est to the end. We couldn't say quietly, quietlier, quietliest. That doesn't sound right. So there's another way that we do this. Quietly would describe one verb or action. More quietly would describe or compare two verbs or actions. And most quietly would help us compare three or more verbs or actions. So sometimes when we have adverbs, we add more and most to the beginning to help us compare. Let's look at this sentence. Oregon is lush, green, and full of trees. That's helping us describe what the Oregon landscape is like. We are going to compare the Oregon landscape to a hot desert. How would you change the adjectives lush and green now that we're comparing two different nouns? So we're comparing Oregon and a hot desert. So here's what our sentence will look like. The Oregon landscape is blank and blank than a hot desert. So we need to find words that fit here for lush and for green. If we're comparing two nouns and our adjective is lush, then we have to add er, and it would be lusher. And if we have the adjective green and we're comparing two different nouns, we have to add er to the end, and it would be greener. So we have lusher and greener. The Oregon landscape is lusher and greener than a hot desert. Now let's compare Oregon's landscape to a hot desert and a dry plain. Now we have three different nouns that we're comparing. We're comparing Oregon, the hot desert, and the plain. So the Oregon landscape is the blank and blank out of the three landscapes. So if we're comparing three nouns and our adjective is lush, we add est, lushest. And if our adjective is green and we're comparing three different nouns, we add est to make greenest. The Oregon landscape is the lushest and the greenest out of the three landscapes. We'll review this more on Wednesday, but for now let's move on to learning our vocab words. I'm going to read you each word and the definition of each word, and then I will try to use the word in a sentence. Beacon. A beacon is something that acts as a guide or a warning. So the lighthouse was a beacon for the ships in the dark. Fared. Fared means how one performed or progressed. The travelers fared well on their journey across the desert. Mishap. A mishap is an unfortunate accident. There was a mishap when I was cooking and I spilt my dinner on the floor. Surged. Surged means to have moved with a gathering force. The football team surged across the field. Torment. Torment is mental or physical suffering. When the people were taken captive, they endured a lot of torment. Great, so now that we've looked at our 5 vocabulary words and their meanings, I want you to turn your Write and Reader to page 232. Once you're there, you'll see 3 different boxes on page 232 and 233, and there's paragraphs with some blanks in there. Your job is to read the little paragraph and then try to fill in the correct vocab word in each blank. Each vocab word is only used one time. So what I want you to do is pause the video and try to figure out which vocabulary word that we just talked about fits in each blank. Press play again when you have all 5 in your Write and Reader filled in. Okay, so let's talk about these together now that you've tried it on your own. So I'm going to read each one for you. Follow along with me. Before 1841, it was very difficult to get to the West. People would travel by ship around the tip of South America to reach Oregon. Then the Oregon Trail was discovered. Between 1841 and 1869, hundreds of thousands of people and blank across America went along the trail. So in this blank, you should have put surged. Surge means to move with a gathering force. So all of those people moved across America along the trail. Let's read the next one. The trail followed river valleys. Landmarks along the way, such as Chimney Rock, were a blank to the travelers. The landmarks could be seen from miles away. Number 2, you should have put beacon. Landmarks along the way, such as Chimney Rock, were a beacon to travelers. Remember that a beacon is something that acts as a guide or a warning, so those landmarks were guides along the way. Number 3. A new kind of wagon was designed for the trail. It blanked much better than the Conestoga wagons that were used before. For number 3, you should have put the word fared. Remember, fared means how something performed or progressed. So it fared much better than the Conestoga wagons that were used before. Number 4. Any blank could delay the wagon train. A broken wheel, an ox losing a shoe, a stampede, all of these would slow the train down. So for number 4, you should have put mishap. Remember, a mishap is an unfortunate accident. So any mishap could delay the wagon train. Number 5. Another blank to travelers was the weather. It was either too hot, too wet, or too cold. Most of the journey was done on foot, as the wagons were used to carry possessions. So this one is our last vocab word, which would be torment. Torment should be the answer that you put for number 5. Remember, torment is mental or physical suffering. So another torment to travelers was the weather. Great, so now that we've finished these vocab questions, let's move on to reading the first couple of pages of our Write and Reader. So please turn the page to page 234. I'm going to read through these pages with you, just like we have the past couple of weeks, and then I'm going to answer the questions at the bottom of each page. So you need to follow with your finger up, finger on while I'm reading. This story is called Off to Oregon by Sheila Boyle. Maybe you're wondering what's been going on in the store, Papa asked as we began eating dinner. Do you mean all the cleaning and packing? I asked. I've sold the store, Papa said. Everything here feels too cramped. We're joining a group of families and we're moving west. Leave the city? The question stuck in my throat. Anarchy, my dear, Papa whispered. The government is offering free land out west. If we don't move now, we may never have another chance. Okay, so the question down at the bottom of the page asks, why did Anarchy's father want to move to the west? So what I want you to do is pause the video now and look back up in your text and underline a sentence that would explain to us why her father wanted to move west. Press play when you've found it. Okay, so the sentence that I see up here that would explain why he wants to move west is this one right here. It says, the government is offering free land if we move out west. That is what you should have underlined. He wants to move west because there is new free land that the government is offering for free. Let's move on to page 235. A week later, my room was empty, and all of my favorite things had been sold to strangers. Only essentials could go in the wagon. Everything else had to be left behind. As we passed the store on our way out of the city, Papa showed no regrets. He remained cheerful, even when we had to get rid of more of our possessions. Mama's cooking stove was left by the side of the road. Beside it were my inks and paints. I had one quill left, tucked into the lining of my dress. Why do you think they had to get rid of more of their possessions? Well, if you think about this, there are a whole bunch of families who are trying to travel together across the country in wagons and on foot. So the less materials and less goods that they would bring with them, the easier it is to carry. So they probably made them get rid of more of their possessions because they needed more room for the essential things that they needed on their trip. Next page. Follow along. Finally, after 6 long, hard weeks of traveling, we reached Independence, Missouri. People filled the streets, clustering around supply stores and trading posts. I watched as an Indian girl about my age came out of a shop. Her eyes met mine, and she smiled. I sat down beside her. Hi, I said, smiling. Anarchy, I said, tapping my chest. Giohai, she said. Me. She slipped a string of tiny blue beads off her wrist and slid it onto mine. I untied a yellow ribbon from my pigtail and tied it in her hair. I had to leave and help restock our wagon, and when I returned, she had vanished. Why did Anarchy give Giohai her yellow ribbon? Well, if you remember back up there in that story, Giohai gave Anarchy some blue beads that she was wearing on her wrist. So Anarchy was returning that gift with a yellow ribbon. It kind of seems maybe like a friendship bracelet where you would trade and share them with people. And let's do our last page for today, 237. I thought that I had made a new friend, but then suddenly she was gone. Now, all I had to look forward to was the rest of the journey. We had 2,000 miles to go. It would take 5 months. Almost from the start, we fared badly. My little sister Petra had a terrible mishap as the wagon train tried to cross the river. Water surged through the rapids. The ferrymen put the wagons one by one on the raft. The oxen swam across. When it was our turn, I heard a scream. Petra had fallen into the water. Petra, head for Rory, I yelled, pointing to my favorite ox. Swimming against the current, Petra reached the ox and held tight until he reached the other side. What mishap did Petra have? I want you to pause the video really quick and write one sentence describing what was the mishap that Petra had, what happened to her. Press play again when you've written a complete sentence. Great, so you should have written something about Petra falling into the water when she was trying to cross the river. You could have also written about her holding on to the ox to get out. A complete sentence that would have worked for this answer would have been, the mishap that Petra had was falling into the water when they were trying to cross the river, but she was able to hold on to an ox until he crossed the river. All right, so that's all we're going to read for today. Thank you so much for following along and answering those questions for me. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Bye!